In the world of mini PCs, there's a lot of new releases every single year, where we're having a lot of, let's say, old school versions that are quite outdated. But the question remains, are these things still interested for emulation? That is what we're going to find out today. Hey, welcome back to the channel. It's awesome that you're tuning in. But in today's video, we're going to take a close look at a very tiny mini PC. But can we turn this thing in an emulation beast, and how are we actually going to do this? In the world of mini PCs, there are a lot of differences, especially when you're looking at, let's say, the low budget line. I love low budget, especially when you can play thousands of retro games with a tiny box like this, because this is actually what we're having. It's a very tiny box that has a lot of power hidden in the inside. This is an older chipset where we're also going to chit chat about, but what are we having? Yeah, that's always a question. This company also releases many different versions. This is also a model called the M1T. So in the box we're finding the power supply itself, and this is just a 12 volt 3000 milliamp, nothing fancy, with a Type-C or USB-C connection. And under here we're finding the HDMI and of course the manual, or I love to call these things the toilet paper manual. Not a lot of information on it, but it's free. They are limited to certain things, especially when it comes to the USB ports or connectivity. So first of all, we're going to have ourselves two USB ports 3.0 at the back, one HDMI, and an input USB-C for the power. Nevertheless, at the front we're going to have an on and off switch, but no USB ports. But we do have ourselves a headphone jack out, and we're having ourselves a micro SD card in. And with this we can do some cool things. So where this thing is quite old already and comes with some different less low spec specifications, I just wanted to check out what can we do when it comes to the emulation itself. We have all kinds of emulation Android boxes. Yep, that's actually what it is. It's an Android box. This is called the Gamebox GX. And this thing comes with an SD card with Emulation installed on it. But the main problem we're having with these devices, we have reached the end game where they are not getting powerful enough to run PlayStation Portable. And this is where I want to showcase what can we actually do with, let's say, around a $100-ish mini PC. The gap when it comes to the money, it's getting really close to each other, but when it comes to the performance, I think these mini PCs are capable of running way more and having way better performance. And there is where we're going to get really interesting. Okay, so I want to focus on Batocera, and the reason why, because there are some kits out there that you can get. I mean, you can buy this very nice case where you can maybe store your mini PC, but inside the case it's completely like a kit. So this contains a hard drive, also called the POW keypad. That isn't one of those different kind of versions you can basically buy, but also includes the controllers. Oh, I must say that I have been, let's say, bitching on these controllers forever because they are okay quality, but absolutely not the overall quality of an original PlayStation 2 controller. So take that into consideration. This is an okay quality, but I have seen way better ones out there. But this is more one of those kits you can just slap on a mini PC, configure it, and you're ready to go. But take consideration where these things claim they are like a plug and play solution. You always need to do tinkering with them, do, or let's say, the power of the mini PCs, and not to forget also some of the things are completely like not configured at all. So you need to have some knowledge about Batocera. Another solution what they're selling is one with or without a controller. I think one of those companies is Kinhang. It's the same situation where they're having 2 TB hard drive. I think there were even cheaper small ones, but 2 TB is basically the sweet spot when it comes to the storage capacity. Yeah, and if you're getting into, let's say, the PlayStation 3 and stuff like that, and you have a more powerful device, then you're going to be having an issue, because then we need absolute more than 2 TB. They're selling it without a controller or with a controller. They are the BiTop controllers. I'm pronouncing the name correctly. They are similar like a PlayStation 4-ish controller, very nice quality, and this kit is, in my opinion, still one of the favorite ones. But let's say you want to create yourself an own Batocera emulation beast. We can just do this by simply adding the Batocera on a USB stick and just plug it into a device. Another way is going to be with a micro SD card. Some of the devices do have even the option to add yourself a micro SD card, so that's very convenient. Also, we have an NVMe or just an SSD that can implement in your device, and this is more of the question, what will it support? And that is one of the things you need to take consideration what you're actually buying. And one of the easy ways is just if you're having an option for a 2.5 inch drive slot, you can just put in an extra SSD. Now making this video, they are quite expensive. You're going to get into the 2 terabytes, but of course solid state is super fast for loading and it is very reliable. Next up, and they are using a lot of these platter disk, old school 2 terabytes. They are dirty cheap to get. And of course, take consideration, a 2.5 inch drive is always like more expensive if you're going to be beyond the 2 terabyte. And actually, this is one of those many ways that you can install Batocera and just actually implementing internal or external with your mini PC. But okay, so most of the guys who are basically making these drives, yeah, you can also do it yourself. And what you can do is get yourself an enclosure and putting the platter disk in here if you don't have an internal, let's say, storage capacity. But and again, take consideration, also get yourself a USB 3.0 for the best and the fastest speeds out there. Also with a platter disk, you have the fastest speed disk. Of course it will, let's say, has differences in the price, but also in the performance when you're getting a slower one. On today's configuration, I just wanted to check out this particular, let's say, setup. So we're having the power supply, the mini PC, and we're going to use ourselves the hard drive that we have configured. So we're going to use up one USB port, yeah, and that's a little bit of a bummer over these things, that we're only having 2 of them. So one needs to be a hub and connecting the controller. For the controller, there we're having also different kind of an option, because we're having so many good controllers out there, like for example the one that came in a Kinhang kit, or just an Xbox 360 controller that I mostly love to use, because it's very reliable, cheap to buy, and very interesting. It's also very comfortable to play, and has been a great support with Batocera. But let's plug it in and let's get ourselves and see what we're getting to do when it comes to this mini PC. But let's take a close look what we're getting in the inside. The device already has been opened up, not by me, but the previous owner or the seller, because when you're ordering these devices, you have all kind of different configurations. When it comes to the storage capacity, the Windows version, but also when it comes to the RAM modules in the inside. I do wonder what kind of, let's say, configuration, but most of these mini PCs will use one single slot RAM, so I'm curious how this will basically translate in this particular product. So let's remove the Parkers and remove the bottom part. So this is actually one of those very cool things that you can just fairly easily add yourself an SSD or a tiny M1 with a solid state drive. So if you want to install Batocera, you can just do a 2 terabyte or 1 terabyte, depending how big of your budget is, and add in this way. This contains Windows, but that's not what we're going to look at today. But this is one of the ways that you can just love about these things. You can swap out the SSD fairly easy. Another thing I find very nice is that we can just plug it out. So this configuration, yeah, I've seen it before. I can tell you this is absolutely a huge nightmare. What do we mean with this? So you can just see that they're actually having 2 PCBs, where both of them will be connected by ribbon cables. If you need to do a teardown with these devices, yep, it's going to be absolutely a lot of shenanigans getting these things back in place. But yeah, if you need to upgrade, you can just actually see there is nothing to upgrade. And yeah, this is a little bit of a problem with these things. Upgrading, it's very limited. But yeah, that's what we can expect with a really cheap device like this. Okay, but how are we going to get the software? You can just download this for free, batocera.org. Here we can find the software that we're going to need for installing and get yourself like this mini PC to run all kinds of retro games. So what you need to do is go into the download page, and you can already see over here that we have all kinds of, let's say, hardware that is supported with Batocera. So this is not like some simple program that is only possible to use on a mini PC. There are all kinds of different handhelds and devices, or just general devices that can get the Batocera running. But the thing that we're going to need, we're not going to scroll through the whole list. In here we're finding the desktop, laptop and other devices. That is one of the ways you can go to. But another thing you can do is, depending on what kind of software we're needing, is that we're having underneath, we're having all kinds of different versions, even to the Anthem and the low power devices. And here we're having old PCs. You can even run Batocera on that too. If you're going to be needing to flash this on a certain kind of storage device, the program that I most of the time use is Balena Etcher. It's a very nice to use free download. You can just download it for free and getting yourself your Batocera installed and flashed on, no, I don't want to have your cookies, reject all. And then of course use this on your Windows device or even on Mac OS. From this point you can just launch the file they've downloaded, the image file, and just burn it to your storage device. Okay, but when you're looking at, let's say, the Batocera, and this is, by the way, one of the latest version, if I'm saying it correctly, this is version 37, or maybe you're watching this later, already an older version, but it doesn't really matter, there's all kinds of stuff that we can play. Take consideration, these game boxes based on Android, they're just fine for, let's say, the basic stuff, 8-bit, 16-bit. I mainly want to focus on some Sega Dreamcast, Atomic Wave, you know, the systems that really struggle on these game boxes, where you sometimes even pay €100 for, or dollars and more. And of course GameCube, one of those systems that are not even available on these cheaper boxes. And there is where we're having the price point getting very close to each other. But with some mini PC that is older already, does it really still matter? That's what we're going to find out. We're going to mainly focus on stuff like N64, just to see how we can actually play and what can we actually do with this, with a mini PC of this price point. But before we're going to do any emulation testing, let's take a close look at the system settings. The reason is very simple. In here we're finding the information and I can showcase you what kind of specs we're actually having. So first of all, I'm using quite a huge hard drive when it comes to this particular one. So it has been formatted to the NTFS system, but when it comes to the temperature of the mini PC, it's 46 Celsius. Of course, it's not being used at the moment, but still, it's quite nice compared with all the Android boxes that have most of the time no cooling whatsoever. So the available memory, it's only single, but it's going to be 8 GB in total. And yep, we're running on the OpenGL 4.6. This is the Intel Celeron 4125, running on 2 GHz. It's a quad-core CPU. And for the GPU, we're going to get ourselves the UHD Graphics 600. Another thing we need to do is checking out in settings of the emulator. So if you're going to be messing with different kind of systems, different kind of power, we need to check out if everything has been configured correctly. Pressing select bring you to the view options, pressing then to the next in the advanced system options will bring you to the emulators. Here we can set up what kind of emulator we want to, or let's leave it to auto. Hey, we can also change between the emulator if you have any problems whatsoever. Another thing I wanted to check out is the rendering resolution. Let's see if we can force it to, let's say, 920 by 4040. Because when it comes to, let's say, Android or boxes, we have most of the time just native resolution. But you know, we can tinker with it just to see how we're getting and how does it will look in the end. Because in the end, with mini PCs, we have so much more power and so much more control over this. Alright, so we'll just start with some Sega Dreamcast on higher resolution. And I just wanted to showcase you the game can do so much more for just less money in my opinion. It looks absolutely so much better. You can just hear that it will stutter a little bit because we're going to be forcing this thing into its maximum potential. You can just always lower it a little bit, but also take consideration that this particular game is very demanding. So if you're going to be switching out to something else, especially two-dimensional games, they will run most of the time just fine. But before we go into deep dive into the rabbit hole of, let's say, upscaling, rendering resolutions, let's get some old school stuff. So what is interesting about this particular system? If you're getting a mini PC, we have games that run pretty damn great. Think about 3DO with a game like this. I must say that I found it absolutely great to see Panasonic 3DO with many different cool games. But the unfortunate thing was with the S95 X4, the latest series of the game boxes, you can just see that it absolutely struggles. But with the mini PC, we have no problem whatsoever. But if you're just going to be looking into the normal stuff, think about a Game Boy Advance. Yep, you really don't need a mini PC for this, simply because the mini game boxes that cost like $50 can play this without any hassle. It's absolutely a great addition. But you need to take consideration when you're getting yourself with Batocera and you're going to be messing around with mini PC. That does tend to cost quite a lot of money. You need to be sure that the system you want to actually play is going to be worth it. Because paying over 100 freaking, let's say, euros or dollars for a mini PC for actually just playing some GBA, that makes no sense whatsoever. Another system that is quite interesting to check on mini PCs, that is the GameCube. But when you're having the low-end, let's say, mini PCs, we do have some struggles with certain platforms. GameCube is absolutely one of those. And yep, you can just see that we do have the possibility to run some games. Soul Calibur is not even the more demanding of, let's say, video games. If you're just going to play some F-Zero GX, they are absolutely unplayable. But this is more like a hit or miss situation. But it's kind of interesting to see that we have this development going on, that we're having very dirty, cheap, tiny mini PCs that can actually play some GameCube. Something we can't do with a cheap game box. The same with GameCube. Xbox Classic is one of those systems that is able to basically boot up. But that's actually the only thing that you're getting. Take consideration these devices, especially the mini PCs with such a low-end CPU. Yeah, this is not going to be an absolutely great experience. Where we have some overall, let's say, gameplay that seems to be working just fine. It's going to be a hit or miss. But it is just really cool to see that some of the games seem to be running at all. Where we have game boxes and a lot of limitations. Now we can actually play all of some classic cool games on a mini PC that costs a fraction sometimes compared with a game box. Oh, by the way, if you wonder why there is no music, it's because due of copyright of music in the game, I needed to shut down and put it basically the part of this on mute. But it's giving you a general idea how the game actually runs, and it's not bad at all. Another interesting system that I wanted to check out is PlayStation 2. But with this low old school chip, you can just see that it does struggle. Maybe with some tweaking, frame skipping, you can get a little bit better overall performance. And of course, if you're having two-dimensional games, there we're finding way better performance than in Tekken, of course. But it is absolutely fascinating to see that we can actually play this on such a low power device. Another interesting system, I think is interesting at least, is the Sega Saturn. So with the newer generation of, let's say, the S95 X4 game boxes or Android boxes with the new Emulation, I think it was for 4.6, we had the option for Sega Saturn. But the performance were okay in my opinion. We're having some issues with some certain games. But also with this mini PC, we do have no problems whatsoever. It is native resolution. But yeah, if you have more power, you can even upscale it where it looks completely better than the original. But still, I think it's a pretty great experience playing this in native resolution and having some overall good emulation with most of the games. And that on a very tiny box. But another system is very interesting to check out is PlayStation Portable. The game boxes, even the more expensive ones, struggle so much with PlayStation Portable. But with the mini PC, we can even upscale it to an internal resolution of 720p without any problem. And then just enjoy these PSP games. I must say they still look horrible, but still it is very interesting to see that we can actually have so many good performance with such a cheap mini PC. Another system I know a lot of people want to revisit is the N64. With cheaper game boxes they promise everything, but in the end ending up with no result whatsoever. And even with the cheaper game boxes like this particular one, you can just play GoldenEye and many other ones without any problem. Yeah, you can try to be an upscaling with the internal resolution. I think for that part we're just going to need more power. But some native resolution, it looks pretty damn good and also works pretty damn nice. Where's that guy? Hello? Oh man, I can never get used to the controls. Oh, there he is. There. There we go. Are you sleeping or what? Come on, there we go. Can I move? Yeah. Yeah. But the conclusion is, if you just would be interested in just the 16-bit and old school stuff, you know, it's going to be no problem whatsoever. This runs perfectly. And I think you don't need a mini PC for this particular part. It's absolutely just for when you want to have like more emulation when it comes to newer systems. There we're going to need a mini PC for. And that's one of the things that we're going to exactly see when it comes to this particular product. It's absolutely great that you can build yourself a mini retro emulation beast for not a lot of money nowadays. Because that's actually what happened over here. But when you're looking at both of the devices, I must say both of them have the positive and the negatives. But when you're looking at the price, I already mentioned a couple of times in this video, they're getting really close to each other. So where the game box is actually just an Android box, and if you're going to be building yourself a Batocera PC, this is absolutely a super cool solution. For example, N64 runs so much better on this tiny box than it's going to be running on this more expensive emulation thing with Emulation. So where we're having a lot of emulation, let's say limitations, you're just breaking them with this tiny box. Of course, there are more powerful out there, but that is something we're going to discuss. So consider subscribing, hit the little bell, and it will be great to see you in the next video.